Well, good evening. It's been a couple of weeks now since the opening at Flux. I've got a fantastic guest for you tonight. Something very different, actually, for what we've had so far. She's a glass artist and quite spectacular as well. But before we jump in that, there's a couple of things. Next week's guest is Leah Ferrara, so I will be seeing her next week, and there's another guest the following week after, obviously, and I've got a couple of things coming up as well in the future. But before we bring Katrina in, I'm going to just say one word, and that word is flux.
My name is Usha Rajagopal, and I'm a British Asian artist and who's been in the art world for nearly 15 years. I also work as a visitor host and guide at Tate Britain. Painting is something which started off as a hobby, but it's taken on a different direction now. Since I've moved to London, I think I'm more exposed to art here and more exhibitions, so I'm trying my very best to take part in those exhibitions.
I'm creator of the Imaginarium, and that's my art is majority steampunk based.
What is art, as far as you're concerned?
What is art?
Just one sentence.
You could ask 100 people and get a completely different answer. For me, it's a way of releasing my imagination. I'm an artist with a camera, so that's how I call myself.
What would you like for people to take away from your artwork?
My enthusiasm. A lot of my work is to inspire them to go and try.
What is art?
Art is your personal influence.
Can you describe your artistic style and the main themes you explore in your work?
Abstract. I use my hand to paint the whole canvas. I'll connect it to cosmos.
What inspired you to become an artist?
Life.
What advice would you give to up-and-coming artists?
Be yourself. Enjoy life.
Hi, my name is Jyoti Bawani.
What is art?
Art for me is a representation of your inner being and also a way to connect with the world.
Okay, there you go. That really does give you a flavour of what it was like a couple of weeks ago, and there will be more exhibitions heading towards Christmas. So please look out for that. You'll find out from me on here anyway, obviously. Now, before I run the film that I've created for our guest this week, I just want to show you something, which is this. Now, you would think from that you'd think from that she's been exhibiting for a very long time, because look at the quality of that stand. Look at the quality of the work that's been put into creating that stand. She's got a person to thank for that, which we'll find out a little bit later. But you can see it looks as though she's been doing it a long time. Well, we might find out completely differently very shortly. But here's the video that I've put together of Katrina's work. Pretty amazing. I must say, I do love putting these videos together every week, and that one's no exception. So let's call her in. Katrina!
Hi, Gary.
How you doing?
I'm really good, thank you.
Yes, and how the nerves? Are they settled down a bit now?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm all right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good. And we can see in your background, so let's I'm just going to maximize you there. Look, we can see your beautiful work that's sitting behind you. That's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how you got to this point in your life as well, which is an interesting story in itself. So I think that's a very good place to start. So just for everybody watching, and there's a few, which is quite nice. Just for everybody watching, why glass?
So it kind of happened by mistake in a way. I would always say that my mum got me into glass, but she would definitely say that I got her into glass. I used to be a buyer back in 2002 for cruise ships such as the Queen Mary. And whilst on travels, I bought her some Murano glass, which she absolutely loved. And she'd been a potter for 50 plus years at that point, and she was in her mid 70s when she decided that pugging clay and dealing with clay and all of that was too much. So the glass inspired her as her next thing that she would move over to, which she did for about 8 years, I believe. So, but because she lived in Somerset and I lived in Bucks, I didn't really get too involved in it until her health declined and I moved her to Bucks so that I could look after her. And it was because of that I then got involved with helping her run workshops, and then got an interest with the glass, got an interest in the pottery, and things just developed from there. So yeah, now it's fully fledged. So it's a kind of sad situation in a way, because she probably wouldn't have moved here if her health hadn't have declined. But so many good things have come from it, and she is absolutely overwhelmed that I've taken on the pottery and I've taken on the glass. And I still discuss things with her and we make decisions together, and I very much involve her in things as much as I can. And that's how I got into it. And that's why glass.
So did you, so you were a potter before that, were you?
My mum was a potter for 50 plus years. Yeah.
Right.
But I now have a pottery studio and a glass studio here where I live. And I personally use the pottery studio more for making molds so I can slump my glass into them. Whereas my mum was a potter, throwing pots on a wheel and mostly wheel work. But yeah.
So does that actually help you? The fact that you've been a potter, does that help you in the way that you mold the glass and you do the work with the glass? Is there a link between those two? Is that how you?
Well, I can definitely make my own molds, so I can create things that aren't just shop bought and people, it's then unique. You've got a lot more flexibility if you can make your own designs and molds that you can slump your glass into. So yeah, it's definitely helped having a mum that was a potter.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was thinking. But it's really, I mean, your work is unusual. It's best. That's a massive compliment, because I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it's unusual because it's different. So I think when people think about glass, they generally think about blown glass. They think about that kind of thing. They don't think about fused glass, which is your route. So now I know the answer to this, but have you tried blowing glass?
I certainly have. Yes. I bought it because Jim, my partner, was absolutely hooked on Blown Away, and we watched all the series and everything. And I very fortunately landed up doing some voluntary work where Elliot Walker and Bethany were at their studio.
For people who don't know, Blown Away is on Netflix. Yeah, okay. So it's a series following a glass blower, I guess.
Yeah, and he won in series 2. And unbeknown to me, when I turned up, it was actually at his studio and Bethany's gallery. So yeah, and then when I saw his work, I was just like, we've got to have a go at this. So we have, and yeah, we were very happy with our results.
I bet there's loads of people out there that would love a go at that, to be fair.
Yeah,
I think I think probably the cost is a bit prohibitive for a lot of people. Don't say, but I do know how much it costs. So, but does that also mean, like, sitting behind you, and we're going to talk about your work in a bit, but I can see sitting behind you is a vase of flowers. Now, presumably you haven't blown the vase, but do you collaborate with somewhere else on that side of it?
So I approached Alistair Malcolm, who is a glass artist at the Stourbridge Museum. He has residency there, and asked him if he would be happy to make bespoke vases for my flowers, so that the whole thing would be handmade in the UK. And also, if somebody's collecting glass, then it's more valuable and more inspiring to that person, because it's two names kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan of collaboration. I've done a bit myself with 2 artists, flux artists, Jane Farley and Katrina Diaz. So we've done. I'm a big fan of a bit of collaboration. I think it helps boost you and the other person you collaborate with. If you can piggyback on someone famous, that's absolutely amazing. That doesn't happen, though, to be fair, or very rarely. But I think, I think it's a great way of going. Now, what I want to do is I've got some images that you've very kindly sent me. I've picked a few out of the 37 you sent me. It's like what I couldn't believe was that weed transfer you sent me was at 4 o'clock in the morning, which I'm thinking, what the hell is going on?
However, people, they don't have limits to when they work.
No, well, that's true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this first one up, because I know there's a sort of story over your landscapes. So that's what this first one is. I'll bring us up beside it. So let's have a little bit of I think everybody will recognize where that is, but let's have a little bit of thought behind this and where this sits in your artistic life.
So the cityscapes really only came by an accident. So all of these pieces, I just turned around to look at it and it's in front of me. All of those pieces that are individually got different coloured strips and different designs in them are all pieces that either broke or went wrong in a project that I was making. And the title of the exhibition was New Beginnings. So I looked at all these pieces thinking, what can I make out of it? And that's how the cityscapes actually came by. Out of sometimes, quite often, things will go wrong. And it's too expensive to just put it to one side and not use it. And quite so, yeah, when lots of little bits and pieces are on my table and I'm just walking backwards and forwards, I kind of then just go, do you know what? That actually could look like this and this could look like that.
Superb.
And what you can't see there are the boats are removable. They're built into little pockets. So you can pick the boats up and swap them around.
Oh, cool. So I'm just trying to get my head around how you've got all these bits all sitting in a big pile, for argument's sake. And obviously your imagination is the thing that's driving it, because you've got to be able to put them all together.
Do
you sketch that out, or do you just work it as you're going? Are you working to a picture you've taken?
No,
or
it's all in my head.
It's all in your head. So that's pretty much how I work. And obviously we both smoke the same dodgy cigarettes, I just think. But well, I do keep people think I smoke Skittles apparently, so but no, I've never done anything like that, so just to put the record straight. But how do you put them all together? How do you join them all together to create the picture?
So that piece, so everything to me, so for me, it's actually 9 times out of 10 the glass is going to tell me what it's going to be, rather than I'm telling it what it's going to be. So with all of these cityscapes, obviously some of them then have been made intentionally, because I've then gone with a theme for an exhibition. But initially those offcuts or pieces of glass will just be sat on my large workspace, and it will take days sometimes for me to just go, do you know what, I think that could look like that, and then if I just added a little bit of this here, so I mock it out on the table.
That's amazing.
Just see if it's kind of going to be anywhere near what I want. That particular piece, because with fused glass, you can put it in the kiln multiple times, but you can also overfire certain colours, particularly.
Right. Okay. Now I'm starting to understand. So you're putting all this together. And then to effectively glue it together, you're putting it back into the kiln for that to happen.
And in various different stages. So
I get that.
So in this instance, on a sheet of clear glass, some of all of those buildings would have gone on first, and then I would have built up the layers, and then added more and more, and then the final thing would have been the boats. So it's tweaking firing schedules, which it's not like putting a cake in an oven and you just put it on 200 and for an hour. The kiln will ramp up to generally 4 or 5 different stages of heat, and then has to slowly come back down again as well. So you have to think very carefully, what are you going to do and how much heat does each piece need, because you don't want to, each time you put it back in the kiln, it's accumulative. So you don't want to then land up melting a little bit of glass more than you want to. You don't, so there's quite a lot of thought that goes into just that in itself.
So when you're doing that, that's not too dissimilar to a jeweler who uses different heat for different processes in something they're creating, because otherwise every time you heated it up, it would all fall apart. So they use different types of silver solder to at different heat temperatures to build up whatever it is they're creating. That's quite impressive. That's really impressive. Okay, so that there are a couple of landscapes. And then we move on to a landscape in effect, but it's not. It's a standalone piece. So what about this one?
So that one there obviously is inspired by London, but because everything about what I do is all about colour, regardless to what the original imagery or the inspiration was. And the piece there that I've got beside me, it's interacting, so you can actually pick up each piece and place it. I mean, you would always potentially keep the wheel at the back, otherwise it'll obliterate everything else. But all the other pieces that you can pick them up and move them around. So it's kind of like an interactive glass piece.
Oh, right.
And yeah, I was just inspired. Love London at Christmas and the lights and everything. So that was kind of just my interpretation of that. And with the gherkin one here, there's like every little diamond was cut out individually with mesh cut to the same size and placed individually to create that texture that you can probably see for behind it. So yeah.
So if you're gonna, how long does something like that take?
Well, that's really quite difficult sometimes. Probably the most difficult thing for me to work out time. I do jot it down, but because I very rarely get a chance to make something from beginning to end without obviously having to do my other work or interruptions and so on. But yeah, that would have taken, that was made over a period of a couple of weeks.
Right. And so are you only ever working on one piece, or do you have a few on the go?
Generally working on one piece, but now if it's like making for the flowers, I need to fill a kiln to make it economical, and I've got a really big kiln and I've got a more economical, smaller kiln that I use mostly for teaching. So either way, you have to fill it. Well, I do anyway. I do see many people sort of opening the lid and there's just one thing in there, but the cost of the firings, I literally get, my money's worth out of it. I want to make sure it's full. So I can work on several pieces depending on what type of firing schedule it needs to go into. So you have to match everything up. So some pieces are waiting for a while until the kiln's full for that particular firing schedule. But on the whole, I mean, at the moment, I'm working on things for RHS Chelmsford, so Hyde Hall. And I'm working on, my workshop is just like all over the place. I've got projects here, there and everywhere, all waiting to go into the kiln. So it's a bit of both, really.
So one thing about controlling all this, as I have been, I'm asking you a question without realising I was completely on mute, and I'm thinking, "Oh my God, she can't hear me anymore."
I was,
Oh, that's the first time, and you're thinking, "What's happened? Where's he gone?"
I thought you nodded off.
No, well, yeah, there could be that as well. Of course, it's an age thing going on. No, what the question I asked was, there was something about these landscapes, though, wasn't there? Which is that you didn't you put them in last minute exhibition or something? You ended up winning them.
No. So what it was is these cityscapes were made for my first exhibition that I'd ever done back in February last year. Only last year. So I made that, but I decided that very early on that I needed to get a good photographer. And so I chose a guy called Simon Bruntnell, which he's been absolutely amazing. And because I've never had a professional photo shoot for anything before, I didn't know how long it was going to take. And I thought, well, surely like just a few of these photos and stuff isn't going to take necessarily all day. And I nearly drove off and I just thought, no, do you know what? Just chuck in everything you've got in case and just have it in the car just in case. So the flowers were actually an afterthought. I had them already made because it was between flowers in this exhibition or cityscapes in this exhibition. And I just thought, maybe the cityscapes are more different, so I'll exhibit that. But I'd had the flowers made before. So it was an afterthought to add them into the photo shoot. And my God, if I hadn't, you know, they are my top seller. So
yeah,
it would have been a huge mistake.
And that's interesting you say that. Well, I mean, we can see the flowers behind you, so I'm going to drop onto one of them. Again, you've already said that this is all about colour, and we can see that with this one in particular. But did you do these first and then come up with the idea of the vase of flowers?
Yes.
Right.
Did I? I'm trying to think now. I believe so, yeah. Because the thing is, the thing I try hardest to do is to make something that I've not seen before. So it's not to say that people haven't done wall work or flowers on the wall or so on, but just the style. Quite a few people say that they can tell that it's the same artist, even if it's completely different cityscapes, vases of flowers, that they can just tell there's a look about it that sort of says that it's from the same person. So yeah, I think I would have probably done the wall flowers first because a lot of people say they haven't got space for things. So it kind of went from there, and then the flowers evolved,
And then onto the flowers.
Yeah.
So we can see from this that it's not just the flower itself; it's also the copper tubing that you've used there to create the stem.
Yeah.
And also the arrangement actually in the vase. So you sell that. You don't sell necessarily sell individual flowers unless you were doing, I suppose, a single stem. And that's got a name. I'm sure that's got a name. It's got, because you have a rose in one, don't you? So I'm sure that's got a name. I can't think of it, but I'm sure it is. But so you're basically selling this as a complete vase of flowers.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. So it's all down to you bending the coppers, getting them arranged, deciding what you're going to do. So that comes back to my next question then, which is what determines, I mean, let's just jump onto the next one because we can see them a little bit closer. So what determines the colour you're going to use?
Well, again, I will just start making a flower, and I'll start with the first one, and then everything else starts to I might make a few, to be fair, but it's when I actually put them in the vase, it then tells me kind of like out of my choice, a bit like flower arranging, what's going to potentially work with what. So, but what kind of makes my flowers probably a little bit more unique is more the stamens than the actual, and the fact that you can see the twisty and turning, like spiraling copper stems in the vase. More so than a flower on a copper stem. So it's the kind of way I present it, and then the stamens as well.
So we've got Lee Churchill online who watches pretty much every week, and thanks for doing that, Lee. But he's got a comment which is fired in, and there's some planning going into this, which is right. There is some planning going into it, but there's also a huge element of, all right, let's see where this takes me, which I think is probably how a lot of artists work, for sure. But what I was trying to get out there with the colours, I mean, you're putting the colour into the glass, are you, or are you starting off with that coloured glass to start with?
So everything that I buy in comes in a sheet of glass. And I then, just a sheet of coloured glass, right? Which is and then, but some of them are called strikers, so they don't actually show their true colour until the kiln has heated them to a certain temperature. they're called strikers. So
Wow.
your pinks and certain coral colours, amethyst colours, they're completely a little bit like glazes in a way, not
Yeah.
anything like what they're going to be until they're fired. So a lot of
Yeah.
imagination and remembering or being able to visualize what it's going to look like when it's not even the right color until
Yeah.
it's fired. Yeah, there's quite a bit of that going into it, but you kind of just, I know when it's right and I know when it's wrong. So I just kind of keep tweaking until, you know, but I get started with at least one or two of them in there. And it's like a game of Jenga getting those flowers in a vase as well without breaking them. Once they're
Well, yeah, I bet, and I bet well, and taking them all to an exhibition must be a little bit fraught.
To be fair, that's been actually really, a lot of people do think that, but with the way I package them, it just works. So yeah, so far, touch wood. Yeah, I'm not even going to finish the sentence.
No. So we have got a question from Lee, which is, does the glass change colour depending on how long it's fired for?
Yes. Yeah. So sometimes you have to hold the glass at a certain temperature, at its hottest temperature, for the minimal amount of time. But you do need to get it to the right temperature and for the right length of time for them to strike their true colour. Otherwise you'll get variations of that colour.
Right. I mean, it's actually, that's the way that my work is printed on metal, is by heat and time. And so if either of those two things are wrong, the end result's wrong.
Right.
So, and it's also interesting how you say, you know, that it looks right, because, and I'm sure Lee will agree with this as well, that when you first learn photography, somebody piles you with all these rules of thirds. You can't take a photograph there. You can't do this. That won't look right. You get fired with all these rules. But actually, if you have that inner sense yourself, you know whether it looks right or wrong. And I've had people say to me, that looks absolutely right, but it shouldn't do, because it goes against the rules. And I went, well, why should there be rules?
Yeah.
You know, well, there shouldn't be. You either know, don't you? You either know whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
And I think that is that's very true with this. It's I'm finding it quite interesting. Again, do you? Yeah, he's right here too. They're guidelines. Yeah, exactly. They're guidelines for people who need them, is what I would say, because I think generally, if you know, is the way I feel about it. Now, would you therefore start making take this vase that we're looking at here, for example? Would you start making that and then thinking to yourself, oh no, that color doesn't work, I'll leave that for another vase, I'll try a different color? Yeah,
I've done that before. Yeah,
that makes sense. That's because one thing I ask this artist every week is, how do you choose your color palette? So would you say that, I mean, let's go back, for instance, to this one, and then come to this one, and then we have a look at this one. You can see there's a theme running here with the colors that you enjoy working with quite clearly.
Yeah, so I've got samples of every color of glass that I work with.
Right.
I wouldn't be able to work with them if I wasn't able to pick them up. And also sometimes when you cross over a color, it's not quite like paint. You can't mix the colors in that same sort of way, of course. But when you place a color in front of another color, you're going to get a new color. And sometimes that's one that you want to completely avoid. They might look lovely separately, but once they cross over, that might be something you really don't want. So cross-referencing colors, having my color chart, the true ones that are fired, because nothing in a book actually ever looks true to color. Massively helps. And so I suppose, yes, I do kind of work with a theme of colors, a selection of colors that I particularly like, but there's always something new or a new introduction of a color somewhere along the line, because no two flowers in any vase are the same. They're all one-off, unique flowers. So,
and that's what the uniqueness is the thing that makes it very sellable. And I know we've discussed this outside of this this as well. Is that, but you know, you and I both understand that we are running a business effectively. We're selling a product,
Mhm.
and people are going to buy your product. They're going to buy my work because it's unique, and they want something to. For generally, looking at a vase of flowers that you've got there, the first thing people are going to want to talk about them, because if you walked into someone's home and that's sitting there, you'd be, wow, where did you get those? You'd want to talk about them. And I think that's, you know, that's one of the things with any form of art, is that it generates conversation. And we found that, obviously we found that at Flux. How did you find your second Flux exhibition?
I really enjoyed it, and it was interesting because I took a new collection, because everything's always evolving, and that went down really well. So it was, I really enjoy it. I love the Flux exhibitions because there's so much that does actually come out of it, and it's not necessarily all about the sales. There's so many other positive things that come out, and the sales are a bonus as well. So yeah.
I mean, if we go back to the picture that I introduced you before I introduced you, if we go back to this one, for example, you can see that you've got your wall art is lit.
Yes.
Now, is that something that you advise people to do if they have it on the wall, or is it just something that you do for an exhibition? What's your what?
So I launched that just in time for the Piccadilly Flux. The reason why I designed and then got a company to make the bespoke panels for me was because the gallery that I sell some of the my work in said that some people had made a comment that they were a little bit kind of concerned about dealing with the glass and fitting each individual one on the wall when they were like these above me. But they are much more robust than they actually look. But, you know, so I just thought, okay, how do I overcome that problem then? Because I don't want to stop people from buying something that they do actually want. And then I thought, as I was thinking about it, well, why should I just put it on almost like a picture frame when it could be something else as well? So that's when the lighting came into it. And the great thing about those is that normally if all these lights weren't on, the color of the glass here would just disappear because it needs light, either normal daylight or good light. And so with these wall lights, they're really lovely to have on when you put your soft lighting on. I've got customers that have them as their main kind of feature as you walk in through their front door. Those are on sort of facing you as you walk in. And so that's really why I kind of came up with that idea, because of I wanted to eliminate people from being able to, not have the wallflowers because they didn't want to install them. So they've been designed so they're a very simple installation.
Yeah, they're very cool, actually. It's a great way of showing your work off. And I think that this is another thing that you've got to have. I'm going to just pull your website up. So just bear with me for a second while I do that. And I've got this one open.
Okay.
So again, we've gone through other colors, and then suddenly, boom, there's one with green and blue, and this really works, especially because you've got that green vase that they're sitting in as well. I think it looks that looks really quite amazing. And so you can go on to KatrinaShearlaw.com, which is up the top here. And I was just generally looking through the gallery while I was finding something. So it looks to me as though you have an idea of what the vase is going to be like. Because this is, again, if it go back between those two, you've got a green one, and now suddenly they're complementing the flowers. So So do you have a chat with your guy that you're collaborating with for the vase to say, right, this is what I would like for this one, or does he make the vase first and then you kick off with the flowers?
So Alistair makes me all the beautiful vases with the golden trail around the bottom. So I've got 2 types of vase because then they fit into a different budget.
Okay.
And so these particular ones that you've just pointed out there are not hand blown by Alistair Malcolm.
Right.
I get them from another source,
Yeah.
just so that I've got 2 price points, because if you still want something,
yeah, that
and
makes
you're
sense.
not that, you're not that, it's not as crucial that it's by a well-known glass blower.
Yeah.
Then I'm trying to kind of please all customers really with their budget.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we all do, because most artists at Flux will have some small prints for sale. There are people that would love to own your work and can't afford it, but if you can offer them something small that's affordable, then what you have to think about that often is somebody else is going to see it. Somebody else is going to say, "Oh, where did you get that?" All of that thing adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you kind of you're certainly hitting the right ways, which, considering that you've not been doing that this long, and look, let's just go back. Just look in the background. This is someone that's not been doing that this long, but clearly knows what they want. That's how it comes across to me. You find so many artists that will spend hours and hours and hours on their piece or pieces, come along and do an exhibition and pretty much throw them up on the wall. And it's like, which is the reason actually why people are not allowed to do that at Flux. You are, because you deal with your glass.
Yeah.
But people are, there's a hanging team that hang them, because the presentation is just as important as the actual piece of artwork. So yeah, you can't please everyone. That's for sure. There will be people that come along and go, "Well, I wouldn't have hung it like that. That's my work," and blah blah blah, and they can change it. There's no problem with that. But in most cases, to be fair, Lisa knows exactly how she wants it all to look, and it flows. I mean, people at home can see from the video that I played at the start just how well the whole exhibition was put together. Fabulous comments from people saying exactly that. So, I think, as I did say too, there'll be more coming up. Now, you have also mentioned in your bit of writing, and I know Jim very well. So what part does Jim play? And I'm not talking about you going on a treadmill or anything like that. I mean Jim as in Jim. What part does Jim play in all this for you?
He's a massive part. He wasn't so much to start with, but he's really taken an interest. He's the most supportive person I could ever wish for. He loves making anything. Just behind me, actually, is his workshop. So behind the wall. So he loves making me my plinths, because everything we look into, we try and make it ourselves. If I'm making something and we've got some lovely wood, he'll make and polish up a nice wooden base for me so that I can then place my glass into it. Everything. And even now, I'm finding that I'm even asking his opinion, because he's really taking an interest in sort of, sometimes when you're so close to the subject, you can't always see the obvious. And some fresh pair of eyes comes in and sort of says, how about it being just a bit like this?
Yeah.
And he's really struck a chord with me with that, because it does work each time. So we're almost like partners in crime with this now. And he installs all my work, as you know. He's just, I'm very lucky.
And it's true. I've said this before on a couple of these interviews, is that if I'm working on something new and I'm working on it, which is generally the case, you miss things. So if I was mastering a bit of music, for example, because I do that too, I would be, I'd have headphones on, and your ears get completely used to what you're listening to. You have to go away. You have to go away for half an hour, do something else, and then come back because you start hearing things. Now, when I'm putting my art together, I will miss something. There'll be something sitting in the picture, and someone will come in and go, "What's that fire alarm doing on the ceiling?" Or and you think, "What?" You haven't even noticed it.
Yeah.
Not even noticed it. And that happened with me with one picture. When my book was being printed, we were at the actual printers, sitting down, signing off the sheets, and I got to one and I went, "Oh my God." And there was a smoke alarm sitting on the ceiling. And I had to stop and say, "Right, leave this with me. That one needs to be redone." And I had to come back and take it out. I mean, it's easy enough to do that in Photoshop. But the point is, or someone will go, "Oh yeah, it's great. Oh, what a fantastic Victorian scene. What's that fluorescent light doing in the corner?" And you think, I didn't even see it. And you're right. Jim will come in and say to you, "Oh, oh, have you thought, yeah, that little bit might not look so good," or whatever. You do need, you have to be prepared to be able to take that sort of criticism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I first started, with me, it was shadows. Getting shadows right was a real issue. And I just thought, like anybody else, I could sort of get away with it a bit, until someone said to me, "You really need to sort your shadows out." And I'm thinking, okay, all right, I'm gonna have to bite the bullet. I went on a one-day course actually, and learned how to do it properly. But that's the beauty, you can do that.
Yeah.
And then now, 10 years later, I'm saying to people, yeah, you look, the only thing's wrong here is your shadows. And shadows are really complex, really quite difficult to understand how you put a shadow into a picture. But if you don't do it,
Yeah.
everybody goes, it's wrong. And it's similar, going to be the similar thing with you. People might look and think, "Oh, I don't think that looks quite right." And but if they can't tell you that, and I'm referring to Jim here, if Jim couldn't feel that he could tell you that without it causing an argument, then that little partnership you've got on the go falls apart. So the fact that you can do that is fabulous, because and you've got him to make all your stands and everything else, because you'd have to pay someone to do that, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Not that I'm suggesting you pay Jim, of course.
No, I don't. But I also do take a photograph of my work as well. And even when I'm teaching, I'll tell students to just take a picture of it.
Right.
Because it does show differently in a photograph than you visually looking at it.
Yeah, that's very true.
So if he's not around for me to be able to ask, or I needed that, then I'll take a photo of it. I'll take photos anyway, but that's when I'll then spot something.
Yeah, so I did an interview, Glyn Dewis, who started me down the Photoshop world in 2012, I think, a long time ago. He interviewed me in March for his YouTube channel, which was fabulous. Really kind of him to actually have me on there. That's how I know Lee, who now watches this. And we're talking about looking at pictures and thinking and not being able to see it. Well, Lee's just put here, in our world, it's called pixel blindness. So because you don't actually see, you can't see it. It's there staring you in the face, but you can't see it. So actually having someone else come in and say, "Oh, have you thought about this?" And also, and I don't know whether this necessarily happens with you, but it definitely happens with me, is that my conversations with people give me ideas.
Yeah.
So I will be talking to somebody at Flux about something completely random, and suddenly a whole new idea will come bouncing into my head.
Yeah.
All from that conversation, or me listening to a piece of music, or that's where I get my ideas from.
Yeah.
And it's really quite it's having that ability, which is why I sort of come back to what you were saying right at the beginning, is how you work, how it organically, effectively takes shape.
Yeah.
Is because that's how your mind works. That's how your imagination generates that image.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. So here's one question for you then, regarding talking about your mum. Presumably your mum has that same ability.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I
And is
definitely,
that where it's come from, would you say?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
The creative side of my family is all on my mum's side.
Right.
Yeah, so it's incredible, really.
Mm.
And with no real intention, because I think it can sometimes be quite normal that when you've got something on your doorstep all the time, you don't always take as much interest in it when you can have it whenever you need to sort of play with a bit of clay or get involved with some glass and stuff. It's sometimes less appealing. But definitely since mum moving to here with me, it's flourished and it's evolving, and I want to mix both, ceramics and glass together and I've got so many ideas. They
Right.
just
So,
crack my head left, right and centre, and I don't even know where they come from half the time.
and what about, how do you sit? How's that relationship sit? Is your mum critical of what you do, or
No, she's incredibly complimentary. I'm the critical one. I'm constantly criticizing myself.
right.
But no, she's just, I think because she invested so much of her life into ceramics and then glass, she's just thrilled that even though I've taken it off in a completely different direction and invested heavily in kilns and glass and all sorts of different things, she's just thrilled that it's going to continue on. And yeah, she couldn't really ask for anything better than that, really.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean it was my dad years ago. Well, when I was 3, had me in a dark room and started me off down the photography route. And I didn't take enough notice at that time. It's the one thing that I'll say to my grandchildren, actually: look, make the flipping most of these years you've got now, because they're going to go. And if anybody says to me, do you wish you'd done anything different, it would have been, I wish I'd taken a bit more notice.
But don't you think that comes with a bit of maturity? I think
Yeah.
most people
Oh, it does. You can't. Look, I was a teacher. I know exactly what the score is. It's you just can't tell kids. Some you can, but the majority of them, they'd rather be playing games than sitting in front of you. But I think you. It does come with maturity, and therefore, I like to say that I wouldn't regret anything that I've done. I'd only regret the things I haven't done, and therefore, I would regret the fact that I didn't pay a bit more attention, and because the things that my dad was doing with photography all those years ago, over 60 years ago, are the things we're now doing in Photoshop.
Yeah.
But he was doing it in a dark room. It was quite amazing, the stuff that he was doing. I just wish I'd have taken a bit more notice. But that's where my creativity comes from. It don't comes down that side of the family. His dad was a master upholsterer, and all of that side of the family comes down to it. So it's quite important you're very lucky that your mum is there being involved with that, because she's been doing it a long time.
Yeah.
And you can take all that skill and all that learning and all that ability, and you can add to that and make great big strides going forward.
Yeah.
And this is why I do this show. I do this show to show people what people like you can do, and that there's all these people out there doing this stuff that never get any sort of real recognition for what they're doing. And I think again, this is Lisa's idea about Flux. She has people who, it's a showcase. You might not necessarily sell anything, but that's not for the want of trying. It's more about the fact that suddenly people go, oh, I know you. I used to have. This is quite funny. I had a great big board when I did Comic Cons. I had a massive board. One wall was all my press. Had it printed on a great big 6x3 sheet. All my press was the first thing people would see. Then when they got to me, they go, "Oh, I've heard of you." No, you haven't. You've just read about it. But that's it. That's the thing. It's the way of putting yourself forward, and just not necessarily being over the top with it or anything like that, but just actually just letting everybody know that you're here and this is what you're doing. And I think the way that you've gone about it, I'm going to just bring you full screen again, looking at all the work that you've got behind you, the way that you've gone about it, the way that you're presenting yourself is exactly what you need to be doing to make sure that people will always go, "Oh, I know who that is." Because that's the thing. For me at Flux, everybody that came up to, I had people coming up to me and went, "I saw you at such and such." All right, yeah, you remember me. A, because I dressed as a steampunk for a start, but also because of my work.
Yeah.
And you've got that uniqueness. You don't need to dress as a steampunk. You've got that uniqueness that your work, people will recognize it, and that it's just pushing that forward.
Yeah.
So that people do completely recognize it. What's next for you then? We've got roughly 4 minutes left. What's next for you?
Well, other than I've done a year of pretty much exhibitions once a month to really kind of get myself out there. Brilliant. And my name known. Brilliant. And my work known. And yeah, so I'd really like to get some of my work into either upmarket spas or hotels. You know, there's a place for yeah, well, that's the kind of plan for the next year probably, because this year's full up with exhibitions and so on.
And I can see that. I can see how your work would sit brilliantly in places like that, for absolutely sure. I mean, it's and you see it, don't you? Mm. You see it. If you go to a proper, beautiful boutique hotel, that's the sort of thing they have sitting in their foyer. That's the sort of thing they have in their restaurants. Mm. You know, it's an absolutely perfect situation. So anybody out there who's listening has got a nice little boutique hotel with some fabulous glasswork in there, please get in touch. And I've already put it up there a few times, but it is KatrinaShearlaw.com. So please get in touch. So pretty much at the end, and I hope it wasn't too traumatic for you. I know that you were feeling a little bit nervous, and I almost had to drag you kicking and screaming into it. But it's been easy.
It's been enjoyable.
It's been
Could
enjoyable.
I just say one thing though?
Yeah, if you like.
I just need to make sure that we credit Simon Bruntnell for the photographs that he's taken.
Yeah. You did say that actually. You did say his name. Yeah.
Because so cool. It's been amazing, the journey that you put me on. Yeah,
and you can see look, you can see if I just go back here, you can actually see that's not someone standing there with their iPhone. No. You know, that is these are really good pictures. And the, you know, going back to what we're talking about, you also understand the fact that presentation's everything.
And it is, but it's necessary.
It's an investment. It's necessary. You know, it is something that you just have to do. Right. Well, I will see you at the next exhibition. Don't rush away. We'll have a quick chat afterwards. It won't be too long because for once tonight we had a sizable lunch, which means dinner tonight's late, and I'm getting to the point now where I've got to really do with it. But don't rush away. I'll turn you off, but stay in the green room. We'll have a chat afterwards. Okay. And
thank you very much,
Katrina. Thank you so much for coming on. I think it's been fantastic. I really hope that people have enjoyed it, and I'm sure they have, because it's absolutely fascinating. And thanks again, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you go. I told you it was going to be a good one. As I've already said earlier, Katrina's work is quite outstanding. Really fascinating to learn. I learned a lot tonight because I didn't know at all how it was all done, and really quite amazing. I know there's a lot of people out there who love fused glass. So as I've already said, you can jump onto Katrina's website, KatrinaShearlaw.com. You can jump on that and you can see her work, have a look at her fantastic gallery, and get in touch. So just remains for me to say that once again, this is next week's artist, another one that was at Flux last week, so a couple of weeks ago. So she is next week's artist on the 15th, so next Thursday, 7 o'clock UK time, and that's Leah Ferreira. I'll have to check that I've pronounced her name right, because obviously it's easy to get some things wrong, as I have done in the past. So all that remains for me really to say is thanks very much for watching, and I will see you all next week.